I genuinely didn't want to like this camera right here, but I've got news for you. Roll that intro.
Hey, I'm Fred Ranger, a travel photographer and filmmaker. For the past decade, I've been fortunate enough to be able to travel all around the world and capture incredible images. In the process, I've learned so much about storytelling and the gear we use to tell our stories in this day and age. And now, it's time for me to give back and share everything I've learned with you. So be happy, enjoy life, and welcome to the journey.
So, the Canon EOS R, very interesting beast, a camera that I truly didn't want to like when I first got it because I thought it was a camera that was lacking behind in terms of specs. I mean, when you have an A7 III like the one that's filming me right now, you are very, very spoiled with the 4K full frame, with the 120p slow motion, with autofocus and audio. So a couple things that you get used to when you use a camera like the Sony A7 III that I'm actually using right now. But this camera has something really unique, and I'm gonna try to expose the things that I really like about this camera, the things that I don't like about this camera, because there are a lot of things that I don't like about this camera. And also a third portion of the review will be about the intangibles, and I will try to explain a little bit later what I mean by the intangibles, but those are not specs or things you find on the actual box or on the spec sheets or on the very technical reviews that you can see on other YouTube channels. So first off, I want to say thank you to Camera Canada that actually sent me this unit for review. I will need to send it back actually very shortly. I've been shooting with it for 2 weeks now, and if you want to buy a Canon EOS R, I entice you to go click on this Camera Canada link down below, or the Amazon link if you live outside of Canada. So the first thing that I really like about this camera, and that my Sony doesn't have or my Fuji's doesn't have, is that flip out screen. I think that's something that you are maybe tired of hearing about, but when you do videography, and it's not just for the the vlogging style that goes like this, but it's also when you do some very like weird angles and you want to be able to see what you're filming, and you want to be like this, and low angle shot and high angle shot. I think this is the best on the market, not only for the fact that it's swiveling like that, but also the quality of the screen, of the LCD screen that you have on the back of the Canon EOS R. So that's the first thing that I think sets it apart of the competition. The second thing that I really like is the ergonomy. I mean, I've been really spoiled with my Fujifilm X-H1. I think this is one of the best ergo that you can find on the market, but I will give it to the Canon that this grip right here is just literally, it fits like a glove when you put your hand on it. And I have big hands, as you know, and when I put my hands on that, all the fingers are very comfortable here, so I can see myself using a camera like that for a long period of time. When I use my Sony A7 III and trying to do yet like a full day of shooting, at the end my hands are tired and they hurt because it's a very different style of body, and my fingers actually get stuck between the lenses and the actual grip itself. So for me, that's something super important, the ergonomy, the fact that it's super comfortable. This is something that I really like about the Canon EOS R. Another thing that I really enjoy using this camera is the actual lenses, because as you know, now there is a holy trinity out there with the, I think it's the 16 to 35, then you've got your 24 to 70, and you've got your 70 to 200, and those lenses are usually stabilized. One lens that I didn't know I would actually like is the 24 to 105, and this is a stabilized lens. I really like their lens design. If you look at it, it's a big lens. It's not a very small lens for a mirrorless system, but you can actually see that this is a really well built lens, and you feel comfortable using it in the rain, in the snow. Here in Canada, it's already started snowing and it's November, so this lens is made for Canada. There you go. Or Norway or Finland or wherever it is snowing and cold. The other thing is that they have added a aperture ring. If you are a Fuji shooter like me, Well, you are pretty familiar with those little rings because you all, I think all the lenses, 100% of the lenses on the Fuji system have that aperture ring. I actually use aperture ring for photography, and I turn it into an ISO dial for videography and for filmmaking. So that makes it easy for me to change my shutter speed, my ISO right here, and my aperture back there. So you can assign all those buttons to whatever you need. So those are the three top things. So there's the swivel screen, you've got the ergonomy, the lenses that come with it, and now let's go into something that is a little bit more intangible, that is not something physical about the camera or any of the specs. And this is the Canon color science. Some of you are non-believer about color science, and this is fine. We all have our beliefs. That's why I'm actually saying that this is an intangible portion of the review, or the first impression. This is by no way a review. This is just a first impression. Again, the Sony, I really like the fact that you can play with the colors. You have a lot of dynamic range, and this is great. But there's something about those Canon colors, and I even adventured myself into playing with C-Log. And this is not something I'm using a lot with my Sony. I don't use S-Log a lot. I am usually in PP1, and that's pretty much, good enough for me. I turn it into 4K, and that's actually the image you're seeing right now. But for the Canon, actually, great 1080p with that 8-bit codec, and I played with it in Final Cut, and actually I'm going to show one example right here that you can see where I color graded it, and it's super easy to color grade, way more easy than the Sony. So for me, that's a small thing, but it becomes a big thing on the output. So if you are a professional color grader, you might not actually care about that, but if you are a photographer that's doing YouTube videos and cinematic videos when you travel, well, you might want to speed up your editing time by having a camera that's closer to where you want to go, or where you want the final result to be. And that's why I truly believe that it doesn't have 4K full frame. When you do 4K, it actually does the crop in, and this is a bummer. I'm pretty sure the next cameras that they're going to come out with will not have that crop, and will have an in-body image stabilization. But that 1080p footage is actually, I will say, it's better than some of the 4K video that I'm seeing out there from other cameras, or even your iPhone. Of course, it's not the same size of the sensor, you can't really compare, but having 4K doesn't equal quality image automatically. I think that the 1080p from the Canon EOS R is actually pretty kick-ass, and to a certain extent looks, to me, to my eyes, a little bit more cinematic than some of the 4K that I'm getting with my Sony a7 III. So enough of the flowers. This is the good stuff, and this is why I will probably play with it a little bit more and think about simplifying my rig, my setup. And I'm actually, let me show you what I have to do when I want to do a video here. I'm gonna go into video, and there you go. So this is the rig, the setup with the big monitor here, and I'm actually losing face tracking when I'm in 4K. The Sony shooters will know that. I have the microphone right here, the light. So having that flip out screen might actually be a little bit more interesting and less cumbersome to set up my YouTube rig. So I would do just flip out the screen, and boom, I'm ready to go and ready to record another video for you guys. So I'm not saying that I'm switching brands or anything like that. I'm just saying that I'm exploring a little bit more about the Canon EOS R, and onto the things that I kind of dislike about this camera. First of all, this camera doesn't have IBIS, and I grew to love actually IBIS because I have it in my Fujifilm X-H1. I have it in my Sony a7 III, not the best, but sometimes it can save a shot that you wanted to handheld, and where you don't have the gimbal, or you don't have a tripod or a steady firm place to put your camera. So the first that it doesn't have it, it does have the image stabilization in the lens, and it's getting pretty good actually. It's getting better and better. It's actually better than the image stabilization in the Fuji lenses, but I'd rather have the sensor stabilized. And Canon has confirmed that they will actually come back with a camera that has it very shortly. I mean, shortly, what is shortly these days? Sometimes for Sony, it's every week, and for Canon, it might be for 2 years, so who knows. But they confirmed that they would be coming back with a in-body image stabilization body. A note, something to note, I mean, this is a sensor that's covered, and this is kind of unique to Canon because I haven't seen that on any other camera. If you look at the A7 III or even the Fujifilm, any mirrorless camera, the sensor is not covered, so that reassures me. But again, I was into the stuff that I don't really like. This joystick here, I don't know what Canon wanted to do here. I find this useless. I deactivated it because I was hitting it and it was changing my settings, and I didn't like that. So I don't know. They were trying to be innovative. That was Canon's version of being innovative, I guess. And the last point is the fact that, you know, even though I find that this 1080p footage is the best on the market right now, I do miss that slow motion autofocus 120p, 24 frames per second. That is something, I mean, they have it, but it's at 720p, so it's not, you know, high def. It's not even full frame resolution. When you do your slow-mos or your super slow-mos, you can always shoot at 60 frames per second and slow it down, you know, half or a little bit more in your software, but nothing beats a good slow-mo at 120p, 24 frames per second. So the Sony A7 III is still king. So those are the things that I actually would like to see improved, maybe via software for the slow-mo if it's possible, or if not, in another iteration of the Canon EOS R or EOS RP or whatever it's called. I'm not too into the Canon system, as you can see, but I'm starting to like this camera more and more. I thought I would hate it. I thought I would be like, okay, so this is Canon's best attempt. But again, with firmware 1.4, if you do have a Canon EOS R, please update to firmware 1.4. The eye tracking got way better, and I think you should definitely upgrade to the firmware, the latest one. I will ask you, if you have an EOS R and you like it or you don't like it, please put the questions down below. If you have any questions, I'm still testing this camera. This is just a first impression video. So as I learn stuff about this camera, I will let you know, because as you know, I want to help you choose the right tool to tell your story. And this might actually be a very interesting option for content creators like me and like you if you discover this video by typing in the search box. If you are not subscribed to this channel, please click that subscribe button and that bell notification so you know next time I will drop a video about this camera or other gear or a cinematic video. And if you want to interact with me, you can find me on Instagram at FredRanger, even on Twitter. Remember Twitter? Yeah, it's still there. And you will be able to drop me a comment or a question there too. I've been Fred Ranger. Be happy, enjoy life, and enjoy your new gear. Cheers.